Hello, Mindsetters, and welcome to this great lesson ever. It's accounting, and it's my favorite. I'm not alone. I'm having Mehesh. How are you, Mehesh?
I'm well, AB. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm supercharged. It's accounting. I love
Oh,
accounting.
that's brilliant. Did you enjoy your public holiday?
I did. Yesterday, I had a good rest, but I was working at the same time.
Oh,
But it
okay.
was still cool.
That's
Yours?
brilliant. Yeah, mine was fantastic, and it's even more fantastic that tomorrow's Friday.
Nice. I was also looking forward, thinking that tomorrow it's another holiday. But James said, no, it was yesterday alone.
Okay.
But for now, what's on accounting today?
Okay, today, guys, we are going to be focusing on the balance sheet. So we're going back to financial statements,
Yes.
which we've already touched on in previous lessons. But today is the opportunity where we're going to focus on an exam type question on the balance sheet.
Right, nice
Okay.
one. And I know this is just a build up from what you've been learning from grade 10 too. So Mindsetters, hope you're up and ready. Go take your position and
Okay.
let's learn.
Okay, brilliant.
Right, Mindsetters, to learn with us today, it's quite simple. Make sure that you join me over Facebook. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/LearnExtra. You can also join us on Twitter. Follow us at LearnExtra. And lastly, make sure that you get today's notes on learnextra.co.za/live. From me, AB, see you in a short while. Mehesh, take your time.
Okay, thanks, AB. Hi, guys. Welcome to another accounting lesson. Today, like I mentioned already, we're going to be focusing on the balance sheet, and we're going to look at an exam type question on the balance sheet. Right, what are we specifically going to focus on, guys? We're going to focus on, let's get a pen out there. We're going to focus on some, there we go, we're going to focus on some year-end adjustments that relate specifically to your balance sheet. Right, guys, I'm not going to waste any time. I want to go straight to a question itself. We will touch on the format of the balance sheet as we're doing the question, so let's get started. Right, today's question is taken from November 2010. Question 4, company concepts will be tested. Financial statements, so this is where the balance sheet is going to come into play. And then something that we are not going to focus on, guys, is ratios and the audit report. Remember, we're only focusing on that balance sheet. Right, the information that we've got. The information below was extracted from the financial records of Monjaji Limited, and we are required to do the following. Right, we've got question A, which is match column A with column B, but guys, I don't want to look at question A just yet. I want to look at the other question, in other words, the balance sheet itself. We will come back to question A. So let's find the next question. Right, there we go. The next question, we're now going to prepare, or we're going to focus on preparing the appropriation account in the general ledger of the business, and this is for 9 marks, so very, very important, that appropriation account. And thereafter, we're going to look at preparing the balance sheet on the 28th of Feb 2010. So that's our financial year end, and we're going to be doing or completing the balance sheet. In brackets, they are reminding us all workings must be shown in brackets. The notes are not required. So remember, guys, if you want to earn part marks, you've got to show your calculations, you're working out in brackets. Right. So that's what we're going to do in today's lesson. Guys, let's not waste any time. Let's get started now. Let's look at the information that is given to us. So the information, let's just get that out. Right, our information. The following balances, totals, get the pen out there. The following balances and totals appeared in the general ledger on the 28th of Feb 2010, in other words, at the end of the financial year. So we are given a list of balances as per our general ledger. Now, guys, please remember, this is going to be our starting point for that balance sheet. In other words, we're going to now start with these balances and we're going to slot them into our balance sheet. Absolutely important that you remember your format in order for you to slot these amounts in the correct place in the balance sheet. Right, the very first item, guys, that we've got, ordinary share capital, an amount of 1,750,000. So let's take that total through to our balance sheet. Okay, so in our balance sheet, remember guys, your balance sheet is simply A is equal to O plus L. Ordinary share capital is O, owner's equity. So this is going to fall under equity and liability section. Okay, there we go. There's our equity and liability. Ordinary shareholders' equity, and we're looking for ordinary share capital, which I've already filled in for you guys. Open brackets, we're bringing down that amount of 1,750,000. Okay, in brackets, because I may have to adjust this figure depending on the information or the additional information that the question could give me. Right, let's go back. Next bit of info. I've got share premium, guys, an amount of 50,000. And again, share premium is owner's equity. So in the balance sheet, we're going to slot in the 50,000 share premium. So back to the balance sheet. Oh, there we go. Where's that balance sheet? There we go. Share premium. Let's get the pen out. In brackets, an amount of 50,000. Okay. Right. Back to the general ledger balances. Next item, retained income, and this is on the 1st of March 2009. In other words, it is my retained income at the beginning of the year. Now remember guys, in this question we've also got to do an appropriation account, which means retained income at the beginning of the year is part of that T account, that general ledger account. So I don't want to waste time. We're looking at opening balances. Let's not come back to that 26,000. Let's take that now through to the appropriation account. So appropriation account. Okay, there we go. There's our appropriation. Very quickly, I just want to remind you about the format of appropriation. Owner's equity. On the credit side, I've already got profit and loss, 344,000 filled in for me, and now I'm transferring my retained income. Okay, retained income, and remember guys, this is at the beginning of the year, and that retained income was an amount of 26,000. We'll just double check that figure in a moment, but for now, let's just fill in the retained income, 26,000. Right, yeah, it was 26,000. Okay, let's move on. The next item, we've got long-term loan sitting at 200 and, let's get the pen out there, 235,200, and again, long-term loan format, absolutely important. Absolutely correct. It is a liability, which means it's going to go under non-current liability. It's a long-term loan. So in my balance sheet, I'm looking for non-current liability. Okay, let's just find that. Okay, there we go. Non-current liability. Very important that I mention the name of the bank. Okay, so it's Oka Bank, or Oka Lenders, according to the question. Oka Lenders. And in brackets, that loan amount, guys, was 235,200. Okay, right, next item. Okay, fixed assets at carrying value. Okay, let's just make a little point there, so we know exactly where we're at. Fixed assets at carrying value again. 1st of March 2009, beginning of the year, which means I've still got to take into account depreciation for the current year, but at the moment, that balance, 2 million, there we go, 2,106,500. So again, let's slot that into our balance sheet. And remember, fixed assets, guys, is your non-current asset. Under tangible assets, in brackets, that amount of 2,106 and 500. Okay, right, next item. We're now moving on to trading stock. So our trading stock, 61,200, and trading stock, guys, is an asset. But remember, it is a current asset, so this is going to fall under inventory. So in that balance sheet, current asset, inventory, open brackets, and your trading stock amount, 61,200. Okay, right, let's move on. Next item, debtors control. So there's my debtors control sitting at 52,000. And again, guys, format absolutely important. Debtors control will fall under trade and other receivable. So let's go to trade and other receivable, current assets, trade and other receivable, and my debtors are sitting at 52,000. Okay, let's just fix that. 52,000. Right, next item, guys, is provision for bad debts. And they're giving me provision for bad debts on the 1st of March 2009, which immediately means they're giving me the old provision for bad debts. So for now, I am not going to take this figure through. I'm going to wait for that adjustment. Moving on, creditors control. So we've now come across a current liability. Absolutely correct. So under current liabilities, in the balance sheet, trade and other payable, that is where your creditors control is going to fall under. So in brackets, let's get that pen out. Your creditors control is sitting at 81,300. Right, let's move on. Next item is bank, and they're telling you guys bank is a debit balance of 54,500. Now remember, bank could either be a debit balance or a credit balance. Debit means bank is favorable, hence it's going to go under cash and cash equivalent. If bank has a credit balance, bank is unfavorable, and it would obviously be a bank overdraft. But for now, this is going to fall under cash and cash equivalent because bank is obviously a debit balance. So on cash and cash equivalent, we're going to take through 54,500. Okay, so let's fill that in. Cash and cash equivalent under assets. There we go, cash and cash equivalent. In brackets, my bank balance at the moment, 54,500. Okay, right, the next item, guys, let's go back there. We've got cash float, 12,500, absolutely easy. You've been learning this from grade 10, cash and cash equivalent. So back to my balance sheet, cash and cash equivalent. I'm simply adding my cash float amount, which is 12,500. Okay. Right, almost done, guys, with these balances. Next item, fixed deposit at Leakage Bank matures in 2013. This bit of information, guys, absolutely important. It's telling us there's still time for the fixed deposit to mature. In other words, it's only going to mature in the next 2 to 3 years, which means it's going to belong under non-current assets. So in that balance sheet, the amount, let's just quickly look at that amount. It is 80,000. So in the balance sheet, under non-current assets, we've got a fixed deposit. Again, I've got to mention the name of the bank. Okay, it is Leakage Bank. Okay, and I've got an amount of 80,000. I can put that in brackets, or I can just take it through because I don't think there's going to be an adjustment to that. They've already told me it's only going to mature in 2013. Right, next bit of info. We then have a deposit for water and electricity. Okay, deposit, water and electricity. Again, format, guys, absolutely correct. Trade and other receivable. So let's slot that in. Trade and other receivable. I'm now simply going to add on to this 52,000, my deposit for water and electricity, 1,100. Right, let's see what's left. SARS income tax. Okay, absolutely important. SARS income tax, and they're telling me SARS has a debit balance. Now remember, this is coming from your general ledger, and when it comes to your SARS income tax, there's provisional tax payments that were made during the year. So this is not the expense, the tax expense for the year, but rather it is your provisional payments. Okay, so again, guys, this figure, I am not going to take it anywhere just yet. I am going to come back to this actual figure. All right, guys, let's just look at the last item. Pension fund, 11,500. And remember, guys, that 11,500 is going to fall under current liabilities, trade and other payables. That's where the pension fund amount is going to be slotted in, plus 11,500. AB, I think we should take a break.
I think so too. On that great note, I'm sure that mindsetters are learning a lot. And you know what, Mahesh, you just reminded me a quote from my high school teacher, Mr. Hlongwane. He used to say that the key of keeping balance in your own life, it is knowing where and when you have lost it. So always double check, mindsetters. See you right after the break. Welcome back, accounting buffins. It is that time again where we still continue learning about balance sheet. Mahesh, take it away.
Okay, thanks, AB. Right, guys, before the break, we were obviously slotting in figures into our balance sheet. We've now done that already. There's just a few more items that we need to look at before we come to the actual adjustments. Right, moving on to your nominal account section, we've got ordinary share dividends. And then in brackets, they are telling us this was an interim dividend. Now remember, an interim dividend, dividends paid during the year, an amount of 80,000. Now this amount, guys, it's coming from the nominal account section, which means it will not go into that income statement, into the balance sheet. But do remember that we are preparing an appropriation ledger account. So that 80,000, my interim dividend, 80,000, that is where I'm going to slot that amount into that appropriation account. So let's do that. Okay, there's my appropriation account. So thus far with my appropriation account, guys, I've recorded my profit and loss, or it was recorded for me, retained income at the beginning of the year. And in terms of appropriating this profit, so on the debit side, I've got the very first item, ordinary share dividends. And guys, please remember, you are not allowed to abbreviate in the exam. This is just for me, but not for you guys. Open brackets, and my interim dividend, guys, is 80,000. I still need to come across that final dividend. Right, back to the information. Let's just find that quickly. There we go. Right, the next bit, I've got final account section given to me. Trading account gross profit, not necessary in this case. Profit and loss account, that net profit, guys, remember this amount was already taken, it was already filled in appropriation for me. Right, now let's start with the actual adjustments. And the very first adjustment that we've got, or additional information. The company has an authorized share capital of 2 million shares with a par value of 2 Rand each. Now remember, guys, you are not completing any notes. And because you are not completing any notes, the first bit of this information, authorized share capital, is not really necessary. But what you do, however, need is that par value of 2 rand. So for now, let's just circle it. I know we're going to need that info. Let's now look at information number 3. The following adjustments still must be considered. The first adjustment that we've got, the directors declared a final dividend of 10 cents per share on the 28th of Feb 2010. Okay, now remember, we're doing an appropriation account and we need ordinary share dividends. Ordinary share dividends, guys, is made up of interim plus final. So this adjustment is going to assist us to calculate what is that final dividend. Now, in order for me to calculate final dividend, I need, let's just extend the page there, I need number of shares issued. Okay, and I'm going to times my number of shares issued by each shareholder gets 10 cents per share. So let's start off with the calculation of number of shares issued. And this is where that par value of 2 rand is going to come into play. So if I go further up, I've got the information that is given to me at the top, ordinary share capital, 1,150,000. So remember, guys, this is the rand value of shares. In order for me to calculate the number of shares issued, I am going to take my rand value, 1,750,000, and I'm going to divide this by par value of 2 rand. So let's get our calculator out and let's do exactly that. 1,750,000. Okay, and I'm going to divide that by 2 rand to get number of shares issued, which is 875,000. So let's go back to our calculation. Okay, so number of shares that were issued, 875,000. And I'm going to multiply this by 10 cents in order to calculate that final dividend. So there's that 875,000 times 10 cents, which should be 87,500. So that is my final dividend. Okay, so final dividend, 87,500, guys. Just make that a bit bigger. Okay, should be fine. 87,500. And remember, this amount is my final dividend. Okay. Let's now look at which 2 accounts are going to be affected with this final dividend that is declared. Remember, final dividend is never paid. It's only being declared. So the 2 accounts that will be affected would be my ordinary share dividends as well as shareholders for dividends. Okay. Ordinary share dividend is the amount that I take to appropriation. Shareholders for dividends is a liability, so obviously it's going to affect my balance sheet as well. So let's now slot that in. Let's go back to the answer sheet. So appropriation account, there's my interim, but I now have my final dividend. So I'm going to add to this amount, let's just get that out, plus 87,500, guys. Okay, and then to my balance sheet, which is on the next page. Just find that quickly. Okay, trade and other payables, shareholders for dividends, that is where I'm going to slot in also the 87,500. Okay, right, done with the first bit of adjustment. Let's now look at the next adjustment. Okay, the next adjustment, let's just take out this calculation quickly because we're going to need a bit of space there. Okay, how are we doing, AB? Do we have any questions so far?
No, we're doing so well. We're having
doing
mind sitters that are helping one another on the page.
Okay,
There's a question that was tricky, but it's quite Good, good on the
Yeah,
page.
is it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to erase this quickly so that we have a bit of space for the next adjustment.
While you do that, let me tell the mindsetters that if you're not on the page, get on the page and make sure that you post your questions. We're here for you. It's facebook.com/learn extra.
Okay, brilliant. Right, guys, the next adjustment. The assessment received from SARS reflects income tax of 103,200 for the financial year. In other words, we now have our tax assessment from the receiver, and they are now telling us that your tax expense for the year is this amount of 103,200. Right, now guys, very, very important, looking at this account. Okay, I'm just going to quickly draw up a T account for SARS income tax. Okay, we've been given, firstly, how much we should be paying the receiver. So according to this information, and I know you guys are absolutely familiar with this account, we're owing the receiver 103,200. But we now need to look at how much have we already paid the receiver. In other words, did we make any provisional payments during the year? Okay, so let's quickly scroll up to the general ledger and let's look for SARS income tax. Right, there we go. There's our SARS income tax. So a debit balance means we've paid the receiver thus far an amount of 95,000. So let's take that total to this T account and let's check whether we're still owing the receiver in terms of tax. Right, this is how much we should be paying. This is how much we've already paid the receiver. So clearly, if you inspect the two amounts, we still need to pay the receiver a balance of 103,200 minus 95,000. In other words, if I balance this account, guys, I'm going to end up with a credit balance. I am still owing the receiver. I should be paying the receiver 103,200. I have only paid 95,000, which means, let's just move that calculator. Okay, which means I still need to pay the receiver. Let's do the calculation, 103,200. Okay, and I need to subtract 95, just delete that, 95,000. And I still owe the receiver 8,200. Now the word still owing, guys, clearly it is a liability. So let's take that through to our balance sheet. I'm just going to write down the total. We're still owing the receiver an amount of, let's just see what the amount was. It was 8,000. Okay, 8,200. And remember, it is a credit balance. Okay, so let's take that through to our balance sheet. Okay, so in our balance sheet, under current liabilities, trade and other payables, I'm now adding on the balance that I still owe the receiver, 8,200. Right, let's go back to that information and let's look at whether we need to take that information through to the appropriation account. Remember, we are also completing the appropriation account. So according to this information, I've been given my income tax expense for the year, and remember, in your appropriation account, on the debit side, you need to show this expense for taxation. So let's go back to our answer sheet, but this time to appropriation. Okay, on the debit side of this account, guys, my details will be income tax. And this time, remember, it is not what you owing the receiver, but rather the expense for taxation for the year, which was the amount of 103,200. Okay. Right, AB, do we have any questions before I carry on?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And a big shout out to Ngo saying you're #1 teacher.
Oh, thank you.
Right, and also question says, what does it mean when we say the amount will be set off for future?
The amount will be set off for future.
future.
Are they talking about tax?
Yes.
Okay, so what do we mean by this, guys? Is simply that, let's say, let me give you a very simple example. Okay, so let's assume you are owing me 10 rand, but I've paid you 15 rand.
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, you are now owing me 5 rand. Okay, do you get the scenario? Right, now what this simply means is that, let's assume you come and you want to give me the 5 rand.
Yes.
But I'm going to tell you, hang on, when I then buy again from you, or when I'm owing you money again, simply offset that 5 rand against any future amounts that I may be owing you.
So you're actually paying more to secure your future payments.
Okay,
or
in
your
a way,
future
yes, because you're
transactions that may
reducing
take place.
your liability for the next financial year, or your expense for the next financial year. Not really the expense, but the liability. So if by overpaying in the next year, you know you don't have to pay that much. It will be offset
Set.
against what you owe.
Clear.
Okay,
Simple.
is that fine?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Right, guys, next bit of adjustment or next bit of info. Number 4, the net profit of 344,000 was arrived at after, very important, after the following items were taken into account. In other words, we don't have to go and adjust this net profit because all of these items that I'm about to look at were taken into account. The very first item, packing material on hand on the 28th of Feb 2010, 4,600. Okay, a grade 10 adjustment. Guys, packing material on hand. In other words, packing material that was not used in the financial year becomes an asset to the business. So in other words, this 4,600 must now be taken to the balance sheet, and remember, it is a current asset and will fall under inventory. So nothing much for me to do in terms of calculation, but for me to simply remember my format, 4,600 under inventory will be my consumables on hand. Okay, so let's find that balance sheet again. Okay, so under inventory, guys, we are now simply adding the packing material on hand, which was 4,000, can't remember the amount, 4,600. Okay, 4,600. Okay, easy marks, guys, not difficult. Right, next bit of information. I've been given provision for bad debts at 5% of net debtors. In other words, this is now my new provision for bad debts. Now remember, guys, when we were looking at the general ledger, we came across provision for bad debts, but that was the old provision. So we now need to calculate what is that new provision. It is 5% of your net debtors. So let's now go to the balance sheet. Okay, and let's quickly find our debtors. Our debtors were 52,000, guys. Okay, just quickly to show you where I'm getting that amount from. Let's go back there. Do you think we should go for an ad break, Avi?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
On that
brilliant.
great note, while you're still looking for that, mindsetters, just know that life is a balance of holding on and letting go of certain things that you don't want in your life. So to all the latecomers that are telling me on the page that they are late, keep balance, time management. See you after the break. Welcome back, our accounting buffins. I hope you're still learning a lot. And if you're late, come on, guys. Pick up your time and let's learn more with Mahesh. And go over on the Facebook page. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/learnextra. And let's learn more, do more, and become more. Mahesh, take your time.
Okay, thank you. Right, guys, before the break, we were busy looking at the new provision for bad debts. And in order for us to calculate the new provision for bad debts, we need our debtors control amount. In other words, our trade debtors. At the moment, your trade debtors sitting at 52,000. So let's now go back to our trade and other receivable. There's that 52,000 and our new provision for bad debts, guys, 52,000. Okay. Times 5%, and that gives us a new provision of 2,600. So remember, provision for bad debts, guys, and I'm sure you remember this, it decreases our, oh, my pens are doing funny things today, AB. So minus 2,000.
Still on holiday, I see.
Yeah, I think so, huh? 2,600, so let's get that back. So minus 2,600. Provision for bad debts, guys, grade 10 adjustment, it decreases your your trade debtors, and in this case, the new provision that we've calculated, 2,600. Okay, do we have any questions, AB, on any of the calculations that I've already done?
I have one question. It's from Tsepiso Koshimkwena. It says, guys, please rephrase the SARS T account. I don't get it when you say it's a credit balance.
A credit balance. Okay, no problem. Let's go through the SARS T account one more time. Okay, let's just bring this down a bit so we can focus. Right, SARS income tax account, guys. If you look at this ledger account, something that I always tell my students to assume, let's assume SARS is a liability minus on the debit side plus on the credit side. Now, the information that we have been given, you've been told that for the year, provisional payments for SARS is 95,000. Now, where am I getting this information from? Let's go through that one more time. Okay, in this general ledger, the balances given to me on the 28th of Feb 2010, and if we look at this information, SARS income tax, there's my SARS income tax, a debit balance. Debit represents payments that were made to SARS, an amount of 95,000. So that 95,000 is obviously on the debit side of this T account because it represents a payment. Remember, payments reduces your liability. I am also told in the adjustment itself, the assessment received from SARS reflects income tax of 103,200 for the financial year. In other words, at the end of the year, the receiver of revenue has now sent the business its tax assessment, and the tax that the business should be paying is this amount of 103,200. Okay, now if we look at, this is how much we should pay the receiver, this is how much we have already paid the receiver. So remember, if I compare, guys, if I compare what I should pay against what I've already paid, you can clearly see that I am still owing the receiver. In this case, if I subtract, I am still owing the receiver 8,200. Still owing means SARS is a liability. Under current liabilities, you owing the receiver again 8,200. I hope I've answered the question for her.
I hope so too, but it is quite clear.
Right. Okay. Right, guys, let's move on. Next item, we've got insurance prepaid 1,000. Easy, easy stuff, guys. There's no calculation. Again, format plays a major role. Insurance prepaid is simply my prepaid expense. And remember, prepaid expense is an asset. It is a current asset which will fall under the note, trade, and other receivable. But in this case, we're not doing a note. We're doing everything in brackets in the balance sheet itself, on the face of the balance sheet. So under trade and other receivables, that amount of, let's just go back to the amount, it was 1,000. Okay, so let's fill that in. So trade and other receivables, don't have much space here, guys, but I'm just going to fill in the plus 1,000. Okay, right, back to the info. Next bit of information that is given to me, depreciation on fixed assets. Again, guys, it can't get easier than this. They're giving you the amount, 32,400. You don't have to do any calculation. You simply need to know where to slot in this depreciation, the amount of 32,400. Depreciation, remember, it reduces the value of your tangible assets. So let's go to our tangible assets and let's reduce tangible assets by 32,400. Okay, so back to the balance sheet. We're looking for tangible assets, and we are now subtracting that depreciation amount of 32,400. Okay, so minus 32,400. Okay, right, back to the info. Okay, the next adjustment. I've been told the total on the rent income account, total of rent income account was 101,500, which included rent for March and for April 2010. And then they tell me the rent was increased by 900 from the 1st of October 2009. Okay, absolutely important adjustment. I know you guys have seen this adjustment before, if not in grade 10, definitely in grade 11, and as expected, it is repeated in grade 12, which means you've got to know your grade 10 and 11 adjustments, guys, because it will appear in your grade 12 exam paper as well. Right, now in terms of this adjustment, what I'm going to draw up is a timeline to help me with my calculation. And remember, the timeline, I'm looking at the financial year that we're working for. 1st March 2009 was the beginning of the year, because 28th of Feb 2010 is the end of the year. Now, according to this information that is given to me, I'm just going to quickly use a different color pen. I've been told rent includes, or the amount included in rent for the months, or for the following months, March and April 2010. So in other words, included in rent is the rent for the month of March as well as the month of April. So in other words, there is obviously 2 months of rent that has been received in advance. I'm looking at an income received in advance, which is obviously a liability and needs to go into my balance sheet. The problem is they are not giving me the monthly rent. However, they are telling me that the rent was increased by 900 Rand from the 1st of October 2010. So if I plot that on this timeline, this is the 1st of October 2009, somewhere around here on the timeline, which means from the 1st of March until the 1st of October, if I count the number of months, guys, you can use your fingers, absolutely fine, but make sure you count the months correctly. So we've got the month of March, April, May, June, July, and then we've got August and September, not October. So in other words, for 7 months, I have been receiving an X amount of rent. I don't know what the rent is. From the 1st of October until the end of April, because that's until where I've received rent. So for the next 7 months, guys, I've been receiving again an X amount of rent, but because the rent was increased by 900 Rand, it's going to be X plus 900 Rand in terms of the rent. Right, let's take this bit of information and let's put it into an equation and let's solve for X. So I've got 7X plus 7, open brackets, X plus 900 is equal to the total rent that was received. There's my amount up here, 101,500. Okay, let's solve for X. 7X plus 7 times X is obviously 7X. 7 times 900 should be 5,600. Okay, and that is equal to 101,500. All right, let's add our x's. So we've got 7x plus 7x, 14x, is equal to, let's take the 5,600 onto the opposite side. So I've got 101,500. And remember, my sign will obviously change to minus 5,600. 14x is equal to, let's get our calculators out. So we've got 101,500. Okay, I'm going to subtract 5,600 to get an amount of 95,900. Let's just write that in, 95,900. In order for me to get my x, divide by 14. Whatever I do on the left-hand side, I do on the right-hand side. Divide by 14. And x, remember guys, is that monthly rent. X is equal to, let's get the calculator out again, divide that by 14, is an amount of 6,850. So x, 6,850, guys. And remember, this is what, or this is where you need to make sure you remember the actual question itself, or the adjustment. Let's just go back to the adjustment. We were told the rent was increased by 900 Rand from the 1st of October 2009, which means I need to remember to add on 900 Rand to this total in order to get the new rent that was received. So let's do that. Plus 900, and that gives me 7,750. So let's fill that in. Okay, 7,750. I'm just trying to think whether I've made a mistake. Has any of the learners picked up anything?
Someone say, Tumete says, I really don't care how you first calculated the rent income account.
The rent income account.
But on this one, I don't think there's...
Is there nothing on this one? Okay, we'll get back to that question, but let's just finish the calculation. Yeah. Okay, so your monthly rent, guys, that you've received, 7,750. And remember, in terms of the adjustment, there's obviously 2 months of rent that was received in advance, which means this amount needs to be multiplied by 2, and that would be my adjustment amount. So let's do that. Let's multiply that by 2 to get an amount of 15,500. Okay. So your monthly rent, guys, sorry, not your monthly rent, but your income received in advance.
All right. Here's what the mindsetters are saying.
Yeah, I feel I've made a mistake. This amount
they say you made a mistake whereby you were saying 7 times 900. It is 6,300.
6,300. There we go. I don't know my multiplication. Okay. Right. Thanks, mindsetters. So this amount here is 6,000. Let's just do that quickly. 6,300. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Which means this amount here would change. Let's just fix that quickly. Okay, let's get the calculator out. Okay, let's fix that, guys. 101,500 divided by, sorry, not divided. Let's clear that. Minus 6,300, and that gives me 95,200. Okay, so 95,200, and this looks more correct. Okay, and then divide that by 14 to give me 6,800. Okay, so 6,800. Just quickly fix that, and then we're adding 900 to that, guys. So plus 900, and I need to remember to multiply that by 2 and to get 15,400, and that is my adjustment amount. Let's just fix that quickly. 15,400. So this is my income received in advance, and AB, all that hard work simply now to slot it into the balance sheet. Let's just do that quickly just to show the learners where this would fall under. So in your balance sheet under trade and other payables, this is where you would add your 15,400. Okay, thanks guys for picking that up.
Right.
Okay, I think that's it.
Smart mindsetters. Quickly, before we just call it a day, let me just ask you these few questions that the mindsetters have. The first one is, when we're doing the balance sheet, how to find out who is owing who?
Just repeat the question, AB.
When doing the balance sheet, how to find out who's owing who?
Who's owing who?
Yes.
Okay, that's a very general question. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. Who is owing who? Just remember, guys, you are the business. Okay, you're the accountant for the business. And if the business is owing money to a supplier or to SARS, it is a liability. But if, for example, SARS is owing the business, it becomes an asset.
All right, last one, quickly. So when I prepare SARS account, is it important to specify it by writing SARS income tax?
It is, guys, because that is the proper terminology for the ledger account, SARS income tax. Okay.
Well, on that note, I think it's a wrap.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Time has gone by.
And we've been learning a lot. Thank you very much, Mahesh.
Okay.
See you next week.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right. Mindsetters, thank you for tuning in, all you accounting buffins. From me, AB, and Mahesh, we just want to say, cheers, keep up the balance.
But today is the opportunity where we're going to focus on an exam type question on the balance sheet.
Right, nice one. And I know this is just a build up from what you've been learning from grade 10 too. So mindsetters, hope you're up and ready. Go take your position and let's learn.
Okay, brilliant.
Right, mindsetters, to learn with us today, it's quite simple. Make sure that you join me over Facebook. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/LearnExtra. You can also join us on Twitter. Follow us at LearnExtra. And lastly, make sure that you get today's notes on learnextra.co.za/live. From me, AB, see you in a short while. Mahesh, take your time.
Okay, thanks, AB. Hi, guys. Welcome to another accounting lesson. Today, like I mentioned already, we're going to be focusing on the balance sheet, and we're going to look at an exam type question on the balance sheet. Right, what are we specifically going to focus on, guys? We're going to focus on, let's get a pen out there. We're going to focus on some, there we go, we're going to focus on some year-end adjustments that relate specifically to your balance sheet. Right, guys, I'm not going to waste any time. I want to go straight to a question itself. We will touch on the format of the balance sheet as we're doing the question, so let's get started. Right, today's question is taken from November 2010. Question 4, company concepts will be tested. Financial statements, so this is where the balance sheet is going to come into play. And then something that we are not going to focus on, guys, is ratios and the audit report. Remember, we're only focusing on that balance sheet. Right, the information that we've got. The information below
Hello, mindsetters, and welcome to this great lesson ever. It's accounting, and it's my favorite. I'm not alone. I'm having Mahesh. How are you, Mahesh?
I'm well, AB. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm supercharged. It's accounting. I love accounting.
Oh, that's brilliant. Did you enjoy your public holiday?
I did. Yesterday, I had a good rest, but I was working at the same time.
Oh, okay.
But it was still cool.
That's
Yours?
brilliant. Yeah, mine was fantastic, and it's even more fantastic that tomorrow's Friday.
Nice. I was also looking forward, thinking that tomorrow it's another holiday. But James said, no, it was yesterday alone.
Okay.
But for now, what's on accounting today?
Okay, today, guys, we are going to be focusing on the balance sheet. So we're going back to financial statements, which we've already touched on in previous lessons, and 10. So that's our financial year end, and we're going to be doing or completing the balance sheet. In brackets, they are reminding us all workings must be shown in brackets the notes are not required. So remember, guys, if you want to earn part marks, you've got to show your calculations, you're working out in brackets. Right, so that's what we're going to do in today's lesson. Guys, let's not waste any time. Let's get started now. Let's look at the information that is given to us. So the information, let's just get that out. Right, our information. The following balances, totals, get the pen out there. The following balances and totals appeared in the general ledger on the 28th of Feb 2010, in other words, at the end of is extracted from the financial records of Monjaji Limited, and we are required to do the following. Right, we've got question A, which is match column A with column B, but guys, I don't want to look at question A just yet. I want to look at the other question, in other words, the balance sheet itself. We will come back to question A. So let's find the next question. Right, there we go. The next question, we're now going to prepare, or we're going to focus on preparing the appropriation account in the general ledger of the business, and this is for 9 marks. So very, very important, that appropriation account. And thereafter, we're going to look at preparing the balance sheet on the 28th of Feb 2010.